The BYD invasion has begun. The first wave of BYD's Ocean line electric vehicles have arrived on a wide-scale market, and thus marks the monumental step of BYD to conquer the global Western worlds. But the question is, will this China-based company succeed? And how will this affect you, me, and the entire world? Today we are going to look at how BYD's global EV invasion, and lay out the factors on why they could possibly be successful. But before all of that, let's look at what led up to this invasion. As you probably know, BYD started up as a battery company. They later ventured into vehicles. And during the 2010 era, BYD started delving into EV commuter cars. China, at this time, was beginning to shift their attention into EV technology and was massively influencing the growth of EV adoption rates through their policies, subsidies and regulations. With their country's focus shifting towards electric vehicles from conventional internal combustion cars, BYD has adopted to this need and worked towards enriching their EV and battery technologies. And like every other car company, they started producing mediocre cars until they slowly started to work in refining their products, gradually gaining experience and also year-on-year gaining market share in their domestic car market. However, they could never compete against more established car companies in their own market. So, what do? You shift your focus into solely the hybrid and EV market segment. Because BYD sources their own battery, they knew that this vertical integration is an advantage, which will pay out in time. And over time, BYD has taken the plug-in hybrid EV mainstream market share in China. Their main competitor was just Tesla, which caters to a totally different market. This is usually the high end. One of the initial weaknesses for BYD, alongside other Chinese car manufacturers, was their car design. BYD acknowledged this, and addressed this by hiring top Western designers. In 2016, BYD made Wolfgang Egger, a former Audi Group head designer, the director for design and development of BYD. This was later on supplemented by hiring other designers from Ferrari and Mercedes-Benz. Joining BYD provides an opportunity to help a young brand develop its design DNA as it looks to expand its global footprint. This concept vehicle will take BYD's consumer vehicles in an exciting new direction, with design cues like its dragon-inspired exterior drawing inspiration from China's rich cultural heritage. Wolfgang Egger. Everything else was going well, but then 2020 hit. The pandemic engulfed the world and no one foresaw what came after. Factories were shut down, supply lines were cut, resources were scarce. Everything went down. When China went on lockdown, this affected a lot of car companies. Most major car companies, including Toyota, decreased their projected production because of the pandemic. But this was a turning point for BYD because of BYD's verticality. The effects of the pandemic did not affect them as much as other companies. BYD saw this opportunity and they carried on with their car manufacturing and development efforts. Whilst everyone was locked away, they rallied on knowing that the pandemic wouldn't last forever and the demand would be there in the aftermath. By 2021, BYD started planning on a bigger global entry. Their first targeted major rollout was Norway. Armed with their latest Blade battery, they released the Tang, a mid-size all-wheel drive 7-seater SUV, to Norway on August 2021. And by November 2021, they were able to achieve sales of 1,000 units. This excursion proved to be valuable for BYD. Whilst their EVs were released to the global market, they knew that a platform on a shared drive had limitations. And this was obvious with their Tang EV, which shared the same platform as a hybrid and petrol model. They later on launched their e-Platform 3.0, which was a totally redesigned platform, and designed only for full electric vehicles to reach their maximum potential. Alongside this concept, they announced the Ocean line series of cars, which include the Dolphin, Seal and Yuan Plus. Having a dedicated platform meant better intelligent driving features. In terms of car design, this also meant that the battery can be placed lower, for better handling because of lower center of gravity, optimization of internal component space and rigid body, which helped with stability. BYD were now speeding away. They managed to sell almost 600,000 new energy passenger cars in 2021 alone, This was a 231% increase compared to their previous year. In December of that year, BYD sold 48,317 full electric cars and 44,506 hybrid cars. Having a strong influence in their own domestic market and now having a better understanding with the foreign market, BYD began on planning towards other global markets. The right-hand drive markets such as Australia, New Zealand, and Japan were next in their crosshair. These were perfect targets because they had the capability and machinery to compete with current EV brands in these markets. They also wanted to secure market share in Southeast Asia, wider Asia, Southern America and other smaller countries. Having a good foothold in the right-hand Oceania market will be of great importance to BYD, because if done right, this will give their brand good reputation to a significant Western market, and solidify their reputation when they decide to further expand in Europe and possibly in the US down the track. Early 2021 had an important event which further increased the probability of BYD's global success. A war was raging in Eastern Europe and this caused a global fuel crisis. There were significant increases in petrol and diesel prices throughout the world. Because of this, the demand for EVs increased even more. The stars couldn't be aligned enough for the Chinese EV giant. This was the moment for BYD to shine. Before we carry on, please support us in educating the world on EVs by hitting that like button. Anyway, let's go back to BYD. BYD's entry into the foreign markets was perfectly timed. Pre-orders were immediately filled. BYD-focused social groups were created and grew significantly. Talks about this Chinese EV company was rapidly spreading. And then BYD was able to deliver their first products into the Oceania markets at an amazing price point. Their entry into this segment immediately cut out a huge share on existing EV brands, more specifically on MG's ZS EV pre-orders, who shifted to BYD. However, BYD's entry into this market didn't come without any controversies. Their first product, the Atto 3 itself, was well received by critics and reviewers. However, the Australian release had compounding issues with the distribution, technicalities, and warranty. Their New Zealand counterpart, however, were able to deliver 500 Atto 3 units on its first shipment and had better reception because they had a more established dealership network. No matter how you look at it, BYD was able to encroach into foreign territory and was able to brute force their way into the Oceania market, gain market share, and create a huge buzz in a small amount of time. The contrasting results between the execution of the two markets, Australia and New Zealand, is definitely another good learning point for this young Chinese EV company. No doubt, they will study their mistakes on the Australian release, and continue the good points from their New Zealand entry and apply it into other planned markets. I wouldn't be surprised if their execution would be significantly better, the moment they go ahead and take on markets like Japan and Europe. By this time, BYD has probably realized that it is of critical importance that they partner with local distributors, who have excellent track records and execution if they are to succeed. They have excellent products, which offer amazing value to the consumer. Their company is vertically integrated, and has a good reputation in their domestic market, which is clearly reflected by their Chinese market share on new energy vehicles, and yet these attributes alone is not enough to dominate the global scene. Without an established global distribution network, their brand is at the mercy of their local dealerships. Their product, no matter how good it is, will still be trampled by their Achilles heel. Will BYD succeed? The company has a huge potential, but they definitely have a long way to go. I suppose it's up to the company's leadership team on how they are going to navigate these foreign market challenges. Only time will tell. The next 2 years will be vital to BYD if they are to succeed in this emerging global EV market. Now, the question still remains. What does this have to do with me? How will BYD's move toward global markets affect yourself and the world? Well, for one, if they keep this up, introducing well-built EVs with good price points, they are going to help bring EV prices down and make it owning a brand new EV more reachable for normal people. As a ripple effect, this is also going to keep other brand prices in check. Do note that BYD's target market is not directly the high-end, although they have plans for halo products. That isn't their core business. And for those not able to buy brand new EVs, BYD's global presence will help introduce more cars into the used market. If they are successful in Japan, within the next few years, used BYD EVs would eventually find their way into other right-hand drive markets, like how it is here in New Zealand. And because their batteries last longer and they are continuously developing it, there is definitely a tendency for their used EVs to be utilized even longer. Somewhat similar to what we have for used first-generation Leafs from Japan. This will evidently increase EV adoption rates, and therefore also decrease the global carbon footprint from road usage and breaking apart extreme reliance on fossil fuels for daily transport. BYD is definitely going to change the world, but they must remember to strategically pick their next moves, and continue to learn from their shortcomings. One wrong decision, a bad local partnership, or unresolved technicalities along the way could hamper the momentum that they are building and even tarnish their reputation. There is one more thing to remember. BYD's success in the global stage will also be a dual-edged sword for the company. Whilst there are already Chinese car manufacturers in the world stage, BYD is the first Chinese car company solely focused in EV and plug-in hybrid cars. It will only be a matter of time when the rest of its domestic competitors will also encroach into the global market. Most of them are probably just watching BYD and also learning from their mistakes, whilst preparing their own campaigns into the global stage. In the end, it will further push the EV adoption and bring stronger competition to everyone. As BYD moves toward global markets, it will only be a matter of time before they trample established mainstream car manufacturers. One possibility is that they might become the new Toyota. We will be making a video on that scenario and why it possibly could happen, so if you're interested in that, hit that subscribe button and you would know when that video drops.